Hello, everyone. I hope you are well. I'm so excited to be on here with you today with Penn State Health. Today, we are going to be talking about how to honor your values without working yourself to death. This is our second in a series on compassion fatigue. And so I'm looking at the poll numbers here. I see that we have people steadily jumping on. So I'm going to leave the poll open for just a few more seconds here. And it looks like most of you, about 80% of you, attended our first compassion fatigue first one, where we talked about what compassion fatigue is and how it impacts you. And it looks like we just had a couple of you here who attended the coaching lab. And then we do have some newcomers to compassion fatigue. So I'll try to give you a quick synopsis of what compassion fatigue is so that you don't feel behind. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get going. I am Angie Nuttle, for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, and I am an author and a speaker. I'm also an executive business coach. So I've been working with Penn State Health and the wonderful Amanda Hulse and Adrienne Bruner and the whole team there for about 2 years now, and absolutely love working with you all. So I'm also a corporate talent expert, and that's why I work with organizations and corporate entities. I spent about 20 years in corporate America myself doing organizational development, and also I did executive coaching, leadership development, talent management. All right, so Jennifer can't hear me. I'm hoping everybody can hear me, so I'm gonna send a message that if you ever have trouble hearing me, log off and then log back on. I'm gonna send this note here to Jennifer. All right, there we go. All right, so back to our regularly scheduled program. All right, let's get going. I am also the founder of the VIP Center for Business Women. So those of you who have been on the sessions with me before, I am sitting at the VIP Center here in Indianapolis. This is a business of mine where I work with corporate and entrepreneurial women, and I help to professionally coach them, help them to get their businesses started, and I also help them to learn how to think, speak, and operate with composed confidence no matter who's in the room. So we are here at the VIP Center today, my corporate headquarters. Also, I am the CEO of Corporate Talent Institute. So I've been doing this for several years now, absolutely love what I do, and I'm so happy to be connected with you today. All right, well, I'm gonna show you the poll because I believe in sharing. So let's share these results. Looks like we've got about 79% of you who have been through our compassion fatigue session before. All right, so let's get going. If my computer will cooperate with me. So before we jump into a lot of information, I do have another poll for you, and I want you to be thinking about this question. Do you feel like you're working more, harder, or less since last month? So let me post this on the poll here. So that poll should be active. Do you feel like you are working more, harder, or less since last month? All right, and as we're getting in the numbers, I'm interested to know this because with compassion fatigue, when we look at compassion fatigue, one thing that we've learned is it's different than burnout. It has some slight differences than burnout. And what I've learned about burnout, people who are experiencing burnout, it's more of a longer term feel, and you tend to just turn yourself numb when you've gone through burnout. And it's hard to go back and rekindle that love. With compassion fatigue, it tends to be more of a sudden onset. You feel it, you have a lot of emotion. A lot of times you feel helpless, like you can't help people. And so what ends up happening is you go through these phases. And one of those the very first phase is you really just start trying to do more. You start trying to do more, and you start trying to work harder. So that's just a symptom of that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to share. Let's see. We've got 85% of you who have voted so far. I would love to see more of you get your vote in. I'll give you just another second. So as I'm allowing you time to do that, I do want to emphasize that, you know, in our very first session for compassion fatigue, we really went through all of the characteristics of it. We talked about, you know, what the result of that is. I'll do a recap on that for you very quickly here in just a moment so that you can get on board and figure out where you stand in all of this. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and share the results because we've got 88% of you who have voted. So let's see what we have to say here. All right, looks like that since last month, 49% of you feel like you're working more. 41% of you feel like you're working harder. There is 8% of you who feels like you're working less. And then there's 3% of you just don't know. You're not really sure. Okay. So that's basically like a small assessment of, okay, where are you in the scheme of things where compassion fatigue is? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that. And oops, I shared that again. All right. So now we're going to move on. Let's move on to talking about some reminders about compassion fatigue. And I want to bring up the fact that compassion fatigue impacts something that we call your 4 personal pillars. And we all have these. I describe these 4 personal pillars as tires. If you can imagine your tires on your car, and when you are experiencing compassion fatigue, it does impact 4 key areas in your life, and it's like air going out of those tires. And so if you've ever been in a car where the tires have not been balanced, you know that sometimes that can become a very bumpy ride, and there's like an annoying thing that pops up on your dash that says, you know, check your tires. Tires are add more air to your tires. My car does that. I have a Nissan Rogue, and it says that all the time. So I'm constantly reminded of that. All right. So let's take a look at these 4 personal pillars just as a recap. So the very first one that gets impacted by compassion fatigue is our emotional pillar. And this pillar is the one that helps us to express our feelings, express what's going on with us. It's also the one that we have to work hardest to compose. And then it's also the pillar where we tend to make a lot of decisions. We've learned before that 80% of our decisions are emotionally based, and that comes from research. So another pillar that gets impacted by compassion fatigue is our physical pillar. So when we think about our physical pillar, this is where we decide what our eating patterns are going to be. I work with a group, one of my coaching groups is called Food Fighters, and we work specifically on managing our relationship with food. We have learned to compensate for our emotional challenges with food. So how many of us here are emotional eaters? You can let me know in the chat. Hey, when you get upset, do you go for the chips? Do you go to the ice cream shop? Dairy Queen, that's one that I used to go from. So yep, I see some affirmations there that we like to emotionally eat. All right, also with the physical pillar, it's our movement as well. So compassion fatigue can impact our movement. It can impact our desire to get out and exercise. It can cause us to even be more jittery than we already are. So it has some opposite effects, but it's also our ability to recover physically from illness. And, you know, we think about our health. So physical all falls under that. All right, we have only 2 people here who are not emotional eaters. Well, congratulations. Congratulations to that. All right. So the next one is our mental pillar. And this is the pillar where all of our cognitive functions are. This is where all of our thinking happens, our logic happens, where we're processing things. We all have ways that we like to process the way that we take in the world. And it's also where we discipline ourselves in terms of our thoughts. And then our spiritual pillar. So this can mean a wide variety of things. For some people, it means that, you know, you're a faith-based person. You practice a certain religion or spirituality. It could be that. But spirituality is really something that it's not something always tangible that you see. It can simply just being present with what's going on. And if you're experiencing compassion fatigue, then you might find that you're struggling to be present. Even on this workshop right now, you may be trying to look at your phone to see what's going on. You may be trying to double time it because you're feeling so under pressure. I want to encourage you, come back. Come back. This is what you're here for. It's to learn how to get over compassion fatigue. But being present, being able to listen when someone is talking. James is making a comment here, trying to keep up on emails. Yeah. And then also spiritual pillar is about just receiving what's going on. I'll clue you in. I just got back from a short vacation last night. I have not had a vacation in a couple of years, and I'm going to tell you, it took a toll on me, and I could really feel that. It took me a couple of days over the holiday just to get myself where I could sit down and just listen to the ocean and listen to what was going on. And that gives you a clue that compassion fatigue may be the culprit for impacting that. But bottom line, compassion fatigue, you're going to feel exhaustion. You can experience pain that you normally wouldn't feel, sleeplessness, may have weight loss, but not in a good way, headaches, poor job satisfaction, irritability, and even feelings of self-contempt. So those of you who have been on compassion fatigue before, you've seen all of these things. So the one thing that we haven't talked about has to do with our values. And if we think about our tires, our 4 personal pillars being like tires, and we've got to keep air in those, we can look at values as a source of fuel. It's what may get us out of bed. And when we think about values, I want you to be thinking about your specific values right now, because I'm going to ask you some questions about those values. But go ahead and start formulating in your head what your values are. I want to tell you what isn't a value. Money is not a value. It's what money gives you. So for example, if you find that you're always thinking about money, it could be that what you're really valuing is security, or you're valuing predictability. So that's an example of what values might be for that. And the thing about values, it's not necessarily things, all right? It's not necessarily things. It's really about what those things give you. And that is the value, okay? All right, so let's talk about some facts about values. Some important things that I want you to understand, that values drive our decisions. So closely tied to those 4 personal pillars, especially the emotional pillar, which is 80% emotionally based decisions, values drive our decisions. Everything that you do is driven by a value. And I'll give you a really good example of this. I was talking about the fact that I got back from vacation. I left last Thursday and came back last night. And so here I am trying to get into the door to the building. I have a million things waiting for me. And I saw where my husband had placed some trash on the outside of the building that he was going to haul off for later. And I knew that people were going to be coming into the building. And I was like, my first thought was, I've got to get that trash out of here. Of all of the things that I needed to do, all of the things that I needed to take care of, I was worried about that trash. And I thought, okay, what value is being prompted for me right now? And it's order and structure. I value order and structure, and I also value aesthetics. I like for things to be beautiful. And so that was showing up in my decision making. I dropped everything that I was doing, knowing that I had to do a session in 10 minutes to move that trash. And that's what drove me. So that's just a really hard and crunchy thing about our, values driving our decisions. All right. So if you're thinking about your values, keep holding those. I'm about to ask you some questions. So I want to give you some facts about values, and here's what they are. First of all, they do drive our decisions, as I just shared. They, if you think about when you got up this morning and the first thing that you did, there was something that you were valuing. When you decide where you're going to go to work, there are values that are tied to that. When you decide if you're going to work late or if you're going to go home and be with your family, there are values tied to that. Everything is driven by those values. Now, here's something I'm about to share with you in just a few moments. We have two different kinds of values. They're called foundational and inspirational. So I'll get you to be able to differentiate between the two and where your values fall into that. Now, here's another fact about values. We can overuse certain ones and we can underuse certain ones. All right, so let's go ahead, and I want to hear from you now. Whoops, go back. I want to hear from you now. What are some of your biggest values? So let's go ahead and post that in the chat. What would you say are some of your biggest, most important values to you? Let's go ahead and plop those on the line. All right. Go ahead and plop those in. Family, stability, feeling secure and supported, connection, yep, family time, health and fitness from Kristen, security and family, connection, stability, predictability, family, health, faith, job. Lots of family and connection here. Yeah, I find that most people really value family. We've got faith, honesty, loyalty. Yeah, these are great values. Faith, again. I do want to say something about family. Most people state that that is a value, and I want to encourage you to really think about what it is about family that you value. And I also want you to think is, where does family fall in the scheme of things for me? When I work with people, people are very quick to say, oh yeah, family is a value. So is there a value that trumps that value? So for example, we do an exercise sometimes, and we're probably gonna do this in our compassion fatigue coaching lab. Hopefully you all are signed up for that. But I have people think about when you're faced with the choice of staying late for work to get a project done, or, and it could be a long-term project, or stop what you're doing and go home to your family, which one do you choose? And what I find when I do that exercise is that people tend to say, well, I end up staying late. So what is it that you're valuing over family? A lot of times with compassion fatigue, family is a big one that comes up that may even get trumped in the scheme of things. All right, so we've got some good values here. We've got competence, loyalty, satisfying family and spouse relationships. So relationship, job satisfaction, and performance. All right, good. All righty, so let's take a look at the two different types of values that I want to share with you. And I want you to be thinking, as we go through this list, do you resonate with any of these particular values? So I'm going to explain what they mean. Okay. So here we go. Foundational values. So the thing about foundational values is that they definitely are a dominant driver in your decisions. And that means that even if you're having a good time or you're really enjoying yourself, it's like this foundational value, it kicks in, and if it's not there, it feels very painful. It's like needing to go to the chiropractor. It's like having your neck out of alignment, and you're going to have headaches and you're going to feel off until you go and you get that adjustment. Well, foundational values are very much like that. They drive your decisions. It's really uncomfortable if they're not in place. And in times of stress, especially when you're experiencing compassion fatigue, we can overuse these, which really magnifies the stress and the fatigue that you're feeling. So sometimes it can work against you if you overuse it. So here is an example. Oh, hold on, I'll share the examples here in just a moment. Whoops. So inspirational values they're still values, but they get you out of bed and you're excited. They tend to just give you this extra energy that you just don't normally feel. So for example, an inspirational value for me might be creativity. I love being creative. I'm an artist, I'm a professional artist, and so I love to just get broken things and put them back together and do mixed media art. And it's just a way to be creative, and it energizes me, and time can fly when I'm doing that. So inspirational values also bring joy to you. You feel this extra, I'm feeling good right now. Now, the thing about our inspirational values, we tend to underutilize them in times of stress. We tend to focus on our foundational values and getting those taken care of, and we tend to leave off the inspirational values. And so it just creates this really tough cycle for us in our lives, and our stress is just magnified. Well, and here's a tidbit for all of you that have not been to the first session. When you think about compassion fatigue, it really is there's a preoccupation with it. And that preoccupation it's absorbing trauma and the emotional stressors of others. So you're taking all of that in, and your foundational values want to come in and just take care of the problem, and they don't get satisfied because you're in a situation where you're watching someone else suffer and you're feeling helpless to do anything about it. So it's like, I go back to the car analogy. It's like being stuck in a ditch and hitting the gas and trying to get out of a mud hole, and the wheel just keeps spinning. So that's what happens there. All right. So let's look at some foundational values that can potentially work you to death. Responsibility. Now, if you have this value when I call this out, let me know in the chat box and say, yes, I relate to that. You can share however you want to about that value if you want to share a little bit extra, but if you relate to that value, then let me know. So when we talk about responsibility being a foundational value, an example might be, let's say that you're working your shift and you feel like you have to stay to the very end because nobody else will do it. And somebody's got to be there. Somebody's got to take care of it. Yeah, it has to be done. It needs to be done. And so, in your mind, the decision is made. I have to do this. Yeah, so we've got some absolutes there. This is a very common value that I think all of us to some certain degree have this value. Okay, how about this one? Harmony. Now this is one that we typically people don't like to call out, but it exists. We don't like conflict. We want everybody to get along. We want everything to be perfect. And So you might stay late, that same scenario that I shared, you may stay late because you don't want anyone to be upset. So you see, yeah, peacekeeper. So Holly Mae, yep. Lee, that's you. Crystal, that's you. And so it's coming from a different decision point than responsibility. So responsibility is about nobody else is going to do it. I need to do it. Harmony is like, I don't want anyone to be mad at me, right? So that's a foundational value. And if harmony is not in place, it feels very painful for you and uncomfortable. So how about empathy? Now, I want to differentiate between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is, you know, you're stepping into it and you're feeling it with them. You feel responsible for it. There's a responsibility element. Empathy is just understanding what the other person is going through. So many of us, we're feelers. You know, 2/3 of all women are feelers. And then, but then just in general, we care about people and we're interested in what happens to them. So we can overwork that empathy and just be empathizing and empathizing. Yeah, I understand. I see where you're coming from. And then, you know, before you know it, you're just caught in this really vicious cycle of just feeling helpless. So Lee, you're more empathy than harmony. It feels really deep. Yeah, people exhaust you, right? Okay, and then family. By the way, these aren't in any particular order, but family is definitely one of those values that it is a foundational value. And how many of you have said, well, I should go home and be with my family? Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic. So family can be a foundational value. Order and structure, just like I described this morning, order and structure, it's a foundational value. It's one that I struggle with and I have to work on it all the time because I want things to be nice and neat and aesthetically pleasing. Yeah, so go home but can't stop thinking about work. Yeah, working from home makes it harder to walk away from work. Yeah, so that tells me that there's something else that you're valuing there in the work. And it's something to really do some reflection on. Order is a hard taskmaster. Yes, totally agree with that. Certainty. Have you ever struggled with this value where you're struggling with ambiguity and you just have to know for certain what exactly is going to happen? And if you don't have that, you're super uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a foundational value. And then predictability, that goes along with certainty. You want to know what to expect. I see people that this is a foundational value and they're so uncomfortable when new things come along or change comes along. So those all can work you to death. And then respect. This is a big one for me. I like to have respect. If I don't feel like I have it, then it's uncomfortable and I work really hard to get that respect. All right, let's move on because we're running out of time. Inspirational values that get put on the back burner. So here we go. Joy. I really value joy. When I'm feeling compassion fatigue or I'm overworking, joy is absent. I tend to put it on the back burner. Laughter. When was the last time that you really laughed? Creativity. This is one of my inspirational values, and I'm sure that some of you have this as well. It might look different than what mine is, but we all have a unique DNA. Fun. These are values. These are inspirational values that get you out of bed. Peace, learning, growth, love. Yeah, so inspirational bucket is empty. So I'm going to encourage you to start looking at your values. I'm going to give you an assignment on that. One inspirational value that I haven't put up here that happens to be my number one is freedom. I love freedom. And I cannot live without it. I've lived without it and there is a certain amount of pain, but it's the thing that gets me out of bed every day, the freedom to do what I want in my day. All right, so basically honoring your values is like balancing your 4 personal pillars. So we want to find ways to honor your values. And just as a reminder, just to add a little bit more complexity to this, when we think about honoring your values, I want you to be thinking about how do I honor my values in my emotional pillar, my mental pillar, my physical pillar, and my spiritual pillar. You can divide it out this way and be thinking, okay, so if I have a value around peace, maybe I need to tap into my spiritual pillar. Or if I have a value around my health, okay, I need to tap back into my physical pillar. But I'm going to give you an assignment, and hopefully you are signed up for the coaching lab that is coming up later in the month, because this is where we do the coaching and the interaction. Today is really just designed as an informational piece of your learning. So here's what to do. First of all, I want you to take time to identify your top 10 values. Now, my admin card did attach a values inventory for you in the invitation today. So I encourage you to download that. It's a comprehensive list of values. Circle your top 10 and organize those. And I want you to categorize them. And I want you to think, are those foundational or inspirational? Okay, so really want you to think through this. And then I want you to pick one of each, one foundational and one inspirational. And I want you to ask yourself, what do you need to do to honor them more in your life? Just pick one in each category. What do you need to do to honor them more in your life? It's simply a choice. You can choose to do this. You can choose to do this instead of sitting in front of Netflix tonight. You can choose this even when you're mulling them through in your head as you're driving home today. And then I want to encourage you to sign up for coaching labs and for other sessions so we can continue our work together, okay? All right, so that's your assignment. And here's a free resource. I know some of you have been on with me before, but for those of you who haven't been on for me, I do have some free resources. I've got a free ebook download that you can download. You just simply have to go to www.angienuttle.com/ebook. And I do invite you to be a part of either my 52 Weeks to Calm community, which is a free community. I do Facebook Live coaching every single week, every single Friday. And then our Bright Bulb community. So that's for my male and female colleagues. You're welcome to join that. We keep it very light and we keep it fun. So anyway, that is that. So you get that gift. Don't forget to download your inventory list. And that is all we have time for today. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in our coaching lab. I can't remember the date that's coming up, but I know it is coming up this month. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much. Thanks, James, Holly. Great to see you, Crystal. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you next time.